Welcome to Middle School Walk and Talk, a podcast series offering heart, hope, and health to members of our middle school communities. Hosts Phyllis Fagel and Jessica McGuire talk all things self-care, student well-being, school culture, and more. Middle School Walk and Talk is designed to support the concepts found in the Successful Middle School, This We Believe, and is a production of the Association for Middle Level Education. To learn more, visit AMLE.org. Today's episode, Middle School is a lot like the hero's journey, with guest Chris Balmy.
Hi, this is Phyllis Fagel. I'm here with Jessica McGuire. We are recording one of the sessions I was most excited to do for the podcast. We're talking to Chris Baum, who is an education leader, a writer, and a school founder. He actually co-founded more than one school, Millennium School in San Francisco. He's currently the founding principal at Hakuba International School in Japan. And he is the author of Finding the Magic in Middle School, which we'll talk about, and more recently, Challenge Accepted, which is a workbook for students themselves. And when Chris walked in, the first thing I said to him is, it's really nice to meet somebody who also wrote a book about middle school, because it's a very small universe, and it's the last thing I thought I would do. And you said...
Also the last thing I thought I would do.
So how did you end up writing a book about middle school?
I mean, this whole journey is probably, all surprising to me. I think it starts with being a pretty unhappy middle schooler myself, who felt lost and disconnected. And because we have this story in our culture that middle school is going to be terrible, I didn't think much of it. Just like, oh yeah, it's as bad as people said. And, I can laugh about it now, but it was a really hard part of my life. And after that finished, I thought, I will never set foot in a middle school again my whole life. And you've got to be careful saying stuff like that. I realized just then the universe does strange things with it. So to make a long story short, in college, I finally started kind of looking back and wondering, did it have to be that bad? Or is it something about the way that middle schools are designed that makes it such a miserable experience for so many people? And then I was hooked. So I decided to become a teacher and later start a middle school to try to show that it can be much, much better.
So how did you design your schools in ways that made them friendly to middle schoolers?
Yeah. I think the heart of it is trying to design them developmentally, which is easy to say, but hard to do, and we're still tinkering. I don't think we're perfect by any stretch. But, for example, I think middle schoolers, when you understand them developmentally, are the most socially motivated humans on the planet. So if your learning methods are not social at the core, you are swimming upstream the whole time, and you're battling them, and no one's happy. So instead, can you do things like have a great advisory program where they feel a sense of social safety and belonging in this consistent space? Can you have, thoughtfully designed project-based learning where they're working in teams and they're using that social energy to power the learning rather than trying to fight it? So that was our aspiration in starting Millennium School, is understand them deeply developmentally. Because I think there are actually great developmental maps out there to understand middle school. I'm talking to two people who know this well, but they're not widely shared. So oftentimes predictable things come up that throw everyone off because they didn't see it coming. So if instead we know that they're going to individuate and need to be hypersocial and other things, then we can design to that instead of reacting.
So, Chris, you lead schools in what I assume are two pretty different contexts, yes. San Francisco and Japan, correct?
Yes.
So what insights have you gained by working in both of those contexts about how we might rethink supporting young adolescents, and also like the educator's role in helping students discover their purpose at such a young age?
Wow, great question. I guess I'll start with this as a philosophical way to approach it, but I promise I'll get practical, which is, it just came from a conversation about the hero's journey and this idea that across different cultures and times, there's this kind of similar story that's told about what a hero is and what they go through. And my theory about why it's similar across cultures is that it's all based on the story of puberty. that puberty is the ultimate hero's journey.
The coming of age.
Coming of age,
yeah,
where you don't choose it. No one's in control of it, not your parents, not your teachers. It happens to you, and you have to figure out how to recreate yourself as a result. So I think across cultures that happens. Cultures have lots of their own layers and twists. But a key thing is that if you feel alone while that much transformation is happening, that's what a nightmare is in many ways, where things are happening to me. I don't know if this is normal. I can't talk about it with anyone. That's nightmarish. But if you feel accompanied in it, then you can turn a nightmarish experience into an adventure. And adventure doesn't mean fun all the time, but it means that you're making meaning out of it. You feel like you are accompanied. You've got people who are validating that you're not the only one who's having these big emotions or having a crush or whatever else it is. So I think that works across cultures as far as I can understand. And that's been a major connection point between those two schools, is having advisory at the heart.
It sounds like you bring your middle schools. I like that too. I think, and I love Hero's Journey. Journey as just an arc for any story. It's my favorite kind of movies, my favorite kind of books. Maybe that's why we like working with middle schoolers, because we get to watch them go through all of that
I think so.
and come out on the other side. We had a 9th grader in here, one of the first people we talked to here, and he was giving advice to his 6th grade self and talking about how much self-awareness he has now compared to when he started, and how important it is as a middle schooler to tune out the noise and try to figure out what it is that you care about and how hard that is. And that spoke to me, and actually brings me to my question, which is about you personally. I didn't know you had a bad middle school experience. There's only 2 kinds of middle school experiences: more or less forgettable, or really, really bad. At least a generation ago.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in the first category. I had to really try to tap into the deep well of my own memory to recall anything significant. Part of it, I think, is that it was only 2 years. It was a really fast junior high model. When you see a kid now and you can see that he's struggling or she's struggling, they're struggling, do you see yourself in them, and do you advise them in the way that you wish you had been advised, and what does that look like?
Oh, thank you. I aspire to, and there are obviously certain kids I can more easily do that for. I think I felt very alone in middle school, so I know that if I see a student of mine who's feeling that way, that I want to accompany them. And I think in many ways that's the spirit of all this. The books and the schools that I've been a part of, is how to help adults become guides and not purely instructors. I think it's great to learn how to be an excellent instructor, but if that's the only mode we have, it's pretty limiting, because there are times that don't call for instruction, that call for facilitation or accompaniment or validation. So that's what I aspire to do in those moments. And also knowing, as a facilitator or a guide, it's not always my comments that are important, but it's finding the right peer that can validate a child's experience. That will resonate so much more than my own.
Agree. That's a really good point.
I like the concept of thinking of educators as guides on the students' hero journey, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, and I'm a huge proponent, like you are, of advisory program in the middle levels. I think oftentimes in middle school models, we silo the times when content area teachers teach real world skills. And one of those times I think might be kind of siloed into advisory time, which I do love. But how can we help teachers move towards being that guide for students all of the time without losing sight? Because I think their fear is they're losing sight of their academic goals, or that some of that work is more work of someone else in the school system, this counselor or whatnot, right? Yeah. How can we help teachers go deeper into that work of being that guide throughout also the academic goals?
Starting point I would hope is that we all get trained in adolescent development.
Yes.
So I think when we have that as a foundation, we know that academics are not in first place. that we have to start off by seeing people as humans, and especially as middle school humans, they have social needs that come first. And if we battle those, we won't get that far with academics. So even if our ultimate goal is academics, it's not actually where we need to start, I believe. The other thing is that I think to be kind to the adults, we didn't get trained in this, how to be guides, and we often didn't get it modeled. You know, if we grew up with traditional instructors and our teacher training was all about instruction, we're not going to feel great stepping out of that. So I think we need it for ourselves first. So in schools that I'm helping with advisory practices, for example, I always recommend start it for the adults first. Because if the middle schoolers in the building are feeling isolated, for sure the adults are too. And if the middle schoolers feel like they don't have any control over their day, probably the adults are too. So can we break down that isolation among the adults where we get to experience being in a safe, facilitated group where we can just be real with our colleagues and start to connect more, feel that we belong more in the building, that our own ups and downs are not anything wrong with us, but are part of the adventure. And I think when we start to be comfortable in that mode and feel like I get how good it feels to be connected to peers, to be facilitated, to be a facilitator, and then we start to offer it to students. And we'll have references in our own history then that help us guide so that we don't just default to, I got to control the agenda, I got to keep it to my, minute by minute plan. So I think instructors focus on content, but facilitators focus on conditions. And I think that's the transformation.
That's the shift.
Yeah.
I like that, and that also gives you an opportunity to have the teachers that are best at that kind of relational work.
Definitely.
You model for the other teachers how to be in a space that feels trusting and you feel seen, and all of because I think that's not something that comes naturally to people. And I've definitely been in schools where people are tasked with being an advisor and it is not something they're comfortable doing.
Totally. Sure.
And it's just mandatory.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay that not every teacher can do this work, but there are teachers who want to, but just don't feel confident.
Yep.
So I love that idea. Do you have anecdotally just some examples or an example of maybe getting some pushback on that, but the person turned it around, or maybe they didn't, but what have you experienced in the implementation of that?
Oh yeah, so every summer I lead a training on advisory facilitation, and it's an interesting mix of people show up to it who are the true believers, and also people who clearly got told to go there. This was not their choice. And it's interesting, as I think in any school building, roughly speaking, you could say there are probably already a third or so of teachers who are so good at this. They just intuitively create these really safe spaces and kids just glom to them. And there are probably a third that are maybe fence sitters, and they can if they feel confident and supported. And there are a third that are actively against it. They're like, I didn't sign up for this, I was never trained for this. Yeah. And I think first, just to have a lot of kind of grace and love for those who are against it, that they just want to feel good at what they do, and they never got help with this. No one ever modeled it for them, they never got trained for it. So if someone throws them into advisory and is like, make a safe space, they're like, what? And how do I get back to my math class or whatever it might be? And that's so understandable that we want to feel masterful. But I think, as you said, you can start off with the teachers who are already loving it. You can create it as a club or do it, in many schools they have an advisory lead team of those really passionate teachers who are supporting the other ones with curriculum ideas. They bring it up at faculty meetings so that it stays alive as a current. And I think what happens then if it starts to go well and there's a right degree of structure is the fence sitters will come over to the pro-advisory side of things and start to feel like, I think for many teachers they say, I got into this profession because I like connecting with students. Mm-hmm. And advisory is the place where I feel the most connected. Consistently, that's what I hear. This is where I feel like I'm actually watching someone transform, not railroading them towards some desired outcome. And then if you've got 2/3 of the teachers that are excited about it and the students start to feel it, the students will defend it. And when other needs come in and encroach on advisory, the students will be like, hey, this is our time. What are you doing with this other administrative thing? Mm-hmm. And now you've got it going in the bloodstream of the school and you're on a good track.
That's great. And if the students push back,
Yeah.
and it makes it harder for that last group, that last tier of teachers to have buy-in, do you have any suggestions for what may be going wrong with the advisory itself, or what might be one small tweak that you could try making to make it more relevant or more fun for the students?
I'd say, when students push back, I always wonder what's behind that. I think in some schools that are high academic pressure, they push back because they've just got so much pressure on them academically, and they think this doesn't seem like it's going to be graded, so I don't care about it. In other schools, it's maybe because they feel like this is not actually safe, or my teacher doesn't even like doing this, and no one's wanting this, so why am I here? I respond differently, I guess, based on which of those. If it's more on the high pressure, high achieving side of things, I would point out to students that every person who's achieved great success, more or less, has had a team around them. People who they can be honest with, who give them critique, who accompany them on their journey. So this is that. This is the place where you learn how to be extremely successful by having a team around you. If it's a school where they're not feeling safe, I would think this is a teacher skill question of how to help teachers feel better about this, maybe again with their own adult advisory first, so that eventually they can be true facilitators. Because I think all middle school students, more or less, are really curious about other middle school students. So if it's actually a space where they get to talk about what's on their hearts and minds and hear what's going on behind other people's masks, they want to be there for that. So it's a question then of the teacher's skill to create that kind of space.
Well, I like the reframe, because I think often or schools in general, can frame advisory as a time where you're getting information.
Yeah.
And if you actually frame it as this is a time for you to be around people who care about you and want to support you and give you an opportunity to support other people, I think it just changes the whole conversation.
Totally. I think you can tell, a simple way to tell is with eye contact in advisory. If they're still mostly looking at you, the adults, then this is an instructional space. And when they start looking at each other, then you know it's getting good. And this is actually a space they feel like I can make use of this for what I need.
I love that.
I do too. Chris, this season on Walk and Talk, Phyllis and I are ending every podcast episode with one practical question and practical application for our listeners. So thinking of your challenge workbook, what's one challenge or activity you could recommend every middle school educator try with their students this year?
Ooh, okay. So if you don't mind me twisting it slightly, because I think one of the key ideas behind that workbook, which is 50 different challenges that help middle schoolers basically feel like authors of their own story and not just kind of in someone else's story.
Yeah.
So key part of that is choice being so essential. So I would never assign one of them, but what I would love to suggest is that middle schoolers take a look at it and they challenge their teacher with a challenge that they saw from the 50 and invite that adult to go for it, or give them a couple options, or challenge each other so that it's more playful and never something that's kind of assigned to them.
Okay.
The spirit of the book is very choose your own adventure. So there'll be some in there that you're like, heck no, I'm never doing that, and hopefully some that catch your attention and get you hooked.
Thank you. I love that. Choose your own adventure in
Yes.
your hero story.
And it's so consistent with your advisory view, which is let's just get everybody interacting. It's more about the interaction than whatever the actual activity is.
Exactly.
So that's great. I love that.
Chris, would you let our listeners know, please, how they can connect with you and how they can find your book and your materials?
Yeah, thank you. So the first book is Finding the Magic in Middle School. Second one is called Challenge Accepted. They can find me on my website, which is just my name, chrisbalme, BALME.com, or I write a Substack called Growing Wiser.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you both.